She was the original Jeffrey Epstein victim, survivor, whistleblower. She has done more than anybody else to bring the sheer horror of the Epstein-Maxwell gang to a wider audience. And as such, she's come across quite a few dead bodies. Another one popped up this week, Stephen Hoffenberg. She was the last person, it seems, to talk to Stephen Hoffenberg. Let's hear from her about who he was and how and why he's now dead. Maria, welcome back to the show. Always wonderful to see you and hear you. I saw you in all the worst newspapers this week.
Yes.
The Hoffenberg tale. Tell the viewers about it, please.
Sure. I would first of all like to say that Stephen Hoffenberg was truly the kindest man I've ever known, and I've known a few men in my life, and he was a true, genuine soul. He cared about anyone who had survived Jeffrey Epstein so much. He cared about all the victims of Tower Financial. He cared about all the victims of Wexner. He was working with one of the Wexner victims, George Tonks, and they were going to be coming forward. And he's actually going on today on another show. You can follow his YouTube. He's going on Carbon Studer, and it's on YouTube under George B. Tonks. And he's going to be discussing a lot of the Wexner and Epstein stuff today. But basically, Hoffenberg was someone who was there for us, and the whole time. I've known him a while, but I've been very, very close. I became very close to him when I became ill, and he called me every single day to make sure that I was well. And he really cared. He didn't want anything from me. I tried to do things for him, and he was such a humble and gracious gentleman. He would never let me do things for him. So I showed him my love, and I told him that I loved him. But I just have a lot of regret right now because I wish I'd told him more. He really suffered the effects of the Southern District of New York, which is really unfortunate because, of course, I told this guy, Ed Shanahan, that wrote the New York Times article, which really butchered the memory of Hoffenberg and also the truth of him. Hoffenberg was somebody who had made a lot of life changes, and he made no excuses for falling for Jeffrey Epstein's antics. Basically, he was very embarrassed that he was a part of it. He was promised by the Southern District that he would be testifying against Jeffrey Epstein, and then they pulled him in and indicted him, and they never arrested Jeffrey Epstein. So I've seen a lot of my friends have this happen where they're involved with Jeffrey Epstein, and Jeffrey Epstein gets the final word, right? And these people end up dying, or they're imprisoned, or their lives are ruined, or they have cancer.
Now, look, I'm sorry that his death grieved you so, but it has to be pointed out, he spent many years in prison as a financial fraud. He defrauded countless people of their savings. He was a Ponzi scheme scam artist, and the only mitigation is that he claimed he was put up to it by Jeffrey Epstein. How credible is that, Maria?
Yes. So he was busy working on other projects, and I think he was embarrassed that he wasn't really the person that was overseeing things properly. Jeffrey Epstein had 2 prior Ponzi schemes, and Hoffenberg never had one. But as soon as Hoffenberg worked with Epstein, he had a Ponzi scheme. So it's just everyone around Epstein ends up falling. It's really interesting. Are you there? I think they lost me.
I'm here. I'm here, and I just wanted, for balance, to set the record straight. He committed egregious fraud against a large number of people. I'm asking you, how credible is it that Epstein done it and ran away?
It's very credible. Okay, so here's the thing. What people don't understand is Jeffrey Epstein was a CIA agent. And I reported a CIA agent to the FBI Brad Edwards writes about it in his book. Brad Edwards is one of our lawyers, and he writes about it. And basically, Jeffrey Epstein continued to remain unscathed, while all the people that were his scapegoats ended up suffering. I was one of them. I didn't go to prison, but I went into hiding, and we were all around the same time period that we were suffering. So I'm not saying that Hoffenberg said he had no part of this. He felt very culpable and guilty, and he was making every effort he could to be the best person he could to make a difference for the lives of other people who had suffered Epstein, or the people who were affected financially by Epstein's crimes. And I happen to know he called them and worked with them to help them. So.
Now, what's the latest on his cause of death? He died alone, I think, in Wisconsin, in his apartment there. He'd been dead for some days. How did that happen with such a high-profile man?
Okay, that's a wonderful question. So the Southern District of New York is the answer. So what happens is the Southern District of New York chews people up, and when they spit them out, they're not able to survive. And he was destitute. He was living in poverty, and he was doing good for others. He was living in Connecticut, and I spoke to him 5 days before I made the call to the police. I had not heard from him in 5 days. And as a result, I was on the phone with my friend Carmen, and I looked at the phone and recognized it had been 5 days that had passed. And I had never gone more than 2 without speaking to him. And I suddenly knew he was gone. And he had been suffering the effects of just a lot of health issues from being in prison so long. And that's really the cause of the death. It's not so sensational, but what happened is the police wouldn't go and do a welfare check. They said that Ponzi schemer does not live in our jurisdiction. This was in Derby, Connecticut. And so I suffered a stroke. That's why I'm in the hospital, because I couldn't convince them to go. And they finally went and out. It's so undignified to have a body lying there. And that's what was really bothering me, is I wanted him treated with respect at the end, because I love him. And he wasn't treated well. The medical examiner called me that evening, and she was very kind. And she said, listen, Maria, we're going to do all we can, but he's been dead for a while. And I knew, she said, when did you last speak? And I said, it was 5 days ago before Saturday. So it was 9 days before they checked on his body. So it's really bad.
Did I hear you correctly? Are you talking to me from hospital, and have you had a stroke?
Yeah, I had what's called a TIA. I had 2 of them. They're mini strokes. And for some reason right now, if I get really upset because I have this superior vena cava issue. Let me see if I can find it. Anyway, basically I'm butchered. My vein was butchered by UAMS, a hospital. And so as a result of it, if I get very upset, I get like choked out, and I can't get oxygen to my brain, because the superior vena cava provides the oxygen through the blood to the brain. And so I'm going to suffer strokes if I cry. And I was just starting to, I knew he was gone. And I was trying to explain to the Derby police officers to please go check on him, and that they wouldn't do it. And so, yeah, I had a stroke. It was a mini stroke is what they call it. And now I'm in the hospital. So.
Well, I'm especially glad that you took the time to talk to us from hospital. I apologize for not saying so in the beginning. I did not know it. Maria Farmer, as always, thanks for joining us on the mother of all talk shows.